Hi everybody, Angus Campbell here again. Okay, where are we now? Thursday the 21st to 22nd, can't remember actually, August. And a quick update on both the E35SS Fury and the A70 Lightning, the rolling chassis of which still waits patiently over there. So firstly, onto the Fury. As you can see, I've got the gearbox outer cover off again, but that's simply because we had the Kickstart Pinion mechanism to complete, which is this mechanism here on the end of the gearbox main shaft. So I've been getting the parts together for that, so we're almost there. Behind the ratchet gear is a spring to ensure that this gear always engages with the ratchet itself, which is here. You can't quite see that very well, but there's two parts there. There you go. Unless, of course, the kickstart is held down, in which case, if the engine's running, the kickstart's down, the ratchet comes into play and doesn't do any damage. So that's the idea behind that. So we've got all the parts together for that, except for the sleeve bush that the Kickstart Pinion gear rotates on. It doesn't rotate on the main shaft itself. There's actually a bush, and we've got to make that. This is the right outside diameter, but it needs reaming out slightly on the inside diameter to go over the main shaft, but it is the right size for the inside diameter of the pinion. So I've only just done a quick fitting there to check clearances, and that's going to be fine. We've found the right nut for it. This will be held in place, this nut, with a tab washer, which goes in between the nut and the ratchet. The nut is slightly too broad, so we might have to trim that down a bit, but anyway, that's the right thread. So we've made some progress on that front then. Also been looking at it's called the timing cover, because it covers the timing gear and pinion for the overhead cam chain. So here what we've got is we have the end of the crankshaft is here with a worm drive on it that feeds the worm there, which is a spindle that goes down to the oil pump, which is here. And the way that oil is fed into the end of the crank here is that oil from the pump output is forced out through that hole into the cover. So let me get this the right way around. So it goes into that hole there, from that hole there, transfers into the cover through that hole there, is forced down the channel into this chamber here, and this chamber has yet to have fitted an oil seal, because the oil seal sits in here, and this chamber with the oil seal then sits on the end of the crank, because effectively this goes up like so. So the main pressure goes into that chamber there and then forced into the end of the crank to feed the crank. Sorry, you can't see that very well. There's also a little tiny fitment here for a spray nozzle, so that it can spray oil onto the worm drive and the cam pinion helical gear which sits behind there. You can see this cam chain pinion here sits on its own separate shaft, and it's driven by a helical gear at the back there. So there's two things there that need to be made sure that they're well lubricated, and that's done by a spray nozzle that fits in there. So you've got the main oil pressure in here. If the oil, if the oil pressure is too much, it's regulated via a hole in the side of the chamber here that goes into this mechanism here, and this is the oil pressure relief valve, except at the moment I just can't get it open. But behind this sleeve nut in that cylinder there is a spring and a piston, and if the oil pressure is too great, the piston is forced up the cylinder, and that allows excess oil then to spurt out through this hole here to relieve the pressure. And then the final piece in the jigsaw is that there is also a channel here, a very, very small thin needle channel here from, again, the main pressure chamber, that feeds this, what effectively is a bearing for the other end of the cam chain pinion here. That's the spindle for it there. So that spindle is supported in this sort of aluminium bush extension here, but it is lubricated separately by, say, a very thin channel that runs from the main pressure chamber. So a very important piece of equipment, this, and although it looks quite complicated, it's all pretty static in action, except for the end of the crank spinning inside the gearbox, the oil seal that goes there. That's pressed in, and then that's held in place with a circlip. So I haven't quite come to that yet. So we've sorted out all the parts for that, so that's good, and that's ready to go on at some point in the near future. However, there's going to be a slight interlude, because tomorrow, well, I've been advised that the crankshaft and crankcase have been repaired for the A70, so I'm going to pick those up from SRM tomorrow. And at the same time then, I'm going to take in the Fury head, which is here, which I've also been preparing, because there's one job left to do on this. It's all been machined, and cams fitted and working, etc. You can see that the head domes have been machined recently, but the one last thing to do is to have valve seats inserted and shrink fitted into there. So I'm going to see if SRM will do that. So we'll be on the road at the crack of dawn to take that head in with any equipment that they want. In this box here, we've got valves, we've got springs, we've got collets, we've got the shoulders, and we've got valve guides too, which they probably will need to insert to ensure that they get the correct angle on the seats. So hopefully they'll be able to do that job, but they're going to have a look at it tomorrow anyway. And then the final update in the short update is with respect to the barrels and the pistons. So these are standard pistons with rings, and we've done some measuring up, and these barrels have got new liners inserted, so we'll need to hone those liners out to the size of the piston. And so I've got a hone and a dial gauge on order, so we can do that job when they arrive. But I've already done some preparation with respect to ensuring we've calculated the right tolerances that we need to introduce with respect to the piston to bore clearance, but also with respect to the ring gap as well. So those have all been calculated now based upon standard practice, and so we're all set to go with that. So things moving forward on several fronts. There we go, so we can get a view of the whole, almost the whole engine there in various bits and pieces, but all moving ahead positively. And I'll be in touch again tomorrow when we go over to SRM to do the part swap, Fury in and A70 Lightning out. Okay, that was all for now. Just a quick update, just to keep the momentum going. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. And I'll be in touch and be bringing another episode soon. Thanks a lot. Cheers. Bye-bye.